It's the road to Stanley, DJ Bean, Frank Seravalli. Panthers take game one of the Eastern Conference final. It took a minute, Frank, but what did we learn in this game?
Yeah, it took many minutes. I would say one of the things we learned is that the NHL Situation Room was probably really regretting overturning that goal within the first 2.5 minutes of OT to end up with the eventual winner, like it felt like 3 hours later. But what we really learned is that this is going to be exactly the series that we thought it would be, DJ, a stone cold steel cage death match of low event hockey. I mean, think about it just from a pure shots perspective. They played 7 full periods of hockey, essentially, and the Florida Panthers averaged what would have been over a normal game just about 25 shots on net. It seemed like for a while that they were having a pillow fight out there because these teams don't give up much, and it's going to take one really opportunistic team in a razor-thin margin series to be the victor.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, the razor-thin margin. I said after game one of the second round that the Panthers were coming out of the East. I'm not going to change my mind there, but I will say the margin for error is just not very high. I thought that's for the first 40 minutes of this game, and I know the first 40 minutes, why you talk about that when there were a bajillion minutes that came after that. During regulation, I thought the Panthers came out and looked like the better team, but when there were silly mistakes, puck over the glass, I mean, the Hurricanes get a little benefit of a dive from Nason there, but they end up getting 2 power play goals, both off of mistakes. The Sam Bennett board in the third period, really, really dumb from the Panthers. What I'm saying is every time the Panthers did something that was maybe a little uncharacteristic, not super smart, the Hurricanes were able to pay. So if you play your game and you keep your heads, which for a tenacious team can be kind of hard to do, I think the Panthers will control this series. Meanwhile, in the Western Conference, we go to game one between the Stars, who have struggled in game ones. They've lost both so far this postseason, and the Knights. How important is it for the Stars to start this series off well?
Extremely important. Think about what we were just talking about with the Carolina Hurricanes. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. They make you beat them. That hasn't been the story to start these series for the Dallas Stars in the first 2 rounds, as you pointed out. And what they're dealing with now is a way better Vegas Golden Knights team than either the Minnesota Wild or the Seattle Kraken. I don't think they have the ability to give games away and win this series. The margin, of course, I think is even thinner in this Western Conference final. The Golden Knights are the best team that the Dallas Stars have faced to this point in the playoffs, with all due respect to Minnie, and I love what Seattle accomplished, but they're just not there yet. And this Vegas team, they've shown that they can beat the very best in the league, taking down the 2 best players on the planet in somewhat quick fashion with the Edmonton Oilers in round 2.
I love this Stars team. I think that they're super well-rounded, and I think they are resilient. I think that they generally recover from taking any sort of punch with a really clean, tight game. That's great, but at some point, it would behoove the Stars to not get into a long series. I had time to look through this last night. There were a lot of intermissions. Frank, over the last 20 years, the Blues are the only team to win the Cup doing all 6 and 7 game series. So far, the Stars have had a 6-game series and a 7-game series. All the other Cup winners are going to mix in a 5-gamer or a sweep at some point, and in a lot of cases, they're mixing in a couple of short series. So while you don't need to have a short series, at some point, I think that mileage is going to add up, even for a good team for the Stars.
I was going to say, maybe that's why I feel pretty good about my Vegas Golden Knights pick, able to dispatch a team like the Winnipeg Jets in 5. You know, I don't think Dallas is tired by any stretch of the imagination. I think your stat is obviously, you know, it makes sense and it adds up. But I don't think it's an absolute necessity, but it would be smart. And that's kind of the annoying thing about the Dallas Stars playoff run, is it could have been a lot shorter had they just been prepared and taken care of business and shown up to play in all the games that they've been in.
Yeah, the obvious error analysis in that stat is that teams probably had a short series at some point because they were the eventual Stanley Cup winners, so they were probably beating up on teams at some point. You saw those, I mean, the Kings would do it, the Blackhawks would do it, all those teams would. The Lightning as well. Who's your Stanley standout from last night?
My Stanley standout is the crowd that was quite literally still standing in the 4th OT for the Carolina Hurricanes. The Caniacs brought it in Game 1 on Thursday night as the Canes opened the Eastern Conference Final for the second time in 4 years. I mean, think about it. We're talking last call at Raleigh Tavern time. 1:55 in the morning is when this game finally ended. There were only a couple shots, DJ, of some people sleeping, but think about this. It's long after concession stands had closed. Everyone's sobering up at this point at the game, and yet still on their feet, still making noise without really a lot to cheer about in this game that I just referred to as a pillow fight.
Yeah, as our friend Pete Blackburn has learned on Twitter a few times, Hurricanes have a rather passionate fan base, so definitely don't disrespect them at any point. Mine's going to be Matthew Tkachuk, the obvious one, the OT winner. He'd gone 6 games, maybe even 7 if you want to count the 3 overtimes that he just played, without a goal. He'd gone 3 games having only scored 1 point, and while the Panthers have shown at points this postseason, even with Barkov, that their stars don't totally need to be going off at all times and that other guys will pick up the slack. I think ultimately, to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, which for this team is to win the Stanley Cup, you want to have your best players playing well. It would have shocked people, I thought, if Matthew Tkachuk extended this relatively quiet streak into the Eastern Conference Finals. He's too good a player. He's too high energy a player. So great to see him going. All right, that'll do it for this road to Stanley. For Frank Seravalli, DJ Bean, we'll talk to you soon.